friend, where we're going to be building a miter saw workbench.
We already built 2 workbenches with drawers that are going to go on the sides.
And now we're going to build a shorter bench that's going to be for the miter saw. And when you put a piece of wood on top of it, it should be pretty flush against all 3 benches.
So let's get started.
The first step is to build the cabinet base. So first you'll want to cut the 2 2x4s into 4 pieces, 2 of them at 21 inches and 2 of them at 36 inches. For this step, you'll want to use corner clamps to secure the pieces together. The shorter 21-inch pieces will be the sides, and then the longer 36-inch pieces will be the front and back. Before screwing anything together, you'll want to make sure that all the sides are square and level. Once you have everything all leveled out, screw the 4 pieces together using 2.5-inch wood screws. The next step is to secure the casters to the cabinet base. We are measuring and placing each caster 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. Figure out which of the 36-inch sides you would like to be the front, and then make sure you attach 2 lockable casters to the front and 2 regular casters to the back. Once you have figured out your placement and made your markings, you can secure the casters into place using 2.5-inch wood screws. The next step is to cut the vertical side posts. You'll want to cut 4 2x4s the specific height needed for your preference, allowing for the height of the casters. For this workbench, we're going to cut the vertical 2x4s at 29.5 inches. Use clamps to attach the vertical 2x4s to the base frame. Make sure that you're placing the verticals on top of the casters and you're aligning the 4-inch side of the 2x4 verticals to the 21-inch sides of the base frame. Make sure that each vertical is level before securing them into place. Once your vertical pieces are level and ready to go, you can secure 3 2.5-inch wood screws into each vertical to attach it to the base frame. Now that all 4 of the verticals are in place, you can secure the 4th screw into each one of the casters.
Woo!
The next step is to create the top frame using the same exact steps and measurements used to create the base frame. Once you have your top frame built, use clamps to attach the top frame to the 4 2x4 verticals. It's smart to keep a 24-inch level handy throughout this project to continuously check to make sure that each piece is level. Once your clamps are in place and all the sides are level, you can first create pilot holes and then attach 3 2.5-inch wood screws into each vertical, connecting it to the top frame. The next step is to measure, cut, and attach the 1/2-inch plywood base sides and back. For this project, the measurements are 36 inches wide and 24 inches long for the base. Because of the vertical support posts, you'll need to measure and cut out the corners with a jigsaw so that the base will fit around the vertical posts. Before cutting out the corners, you'll need to use a table saw to cut the bottom support base according to the measurements. And like I said, for our project, it is 36 inches wide by 24 inches long. After that, you can use a jigsaw to cut out the corners. The next step is to take measurements for those missing pieces on the corner, and then you can use a piece of scrap wood and replicate the measurements and then just cut them out with the jigsaw. Next, you'll want to use wood glue to attach the base and the corners to the frame. And then you can hold them into place using wood clamps, and after that you can secure all the pieces together using a brad nail gun. Now we need to cut and attach the sides and the back. For this project, the back will be 36 by 32.875 inches, and the 2 side pieces will each be 22.125 by 32.875 inches. Once again, you'll want to use a table saw to cut the plywood according to your measurements, and after that, you can secure the back and the sides using wood glue, clamps, and a brad nail gun. The next step is to attach facing to give the workbench a more finished look. To do this, we are using 1x2 wood boards, and you'll want to measure the top, bottom, and sides of the front of the workbench. Once you have your 4 pieces cut out, you'll want to use wood glue and clamps to hold them into place so that you can use wood screws to secure them to the workbench on all 4 sides. Now we're going to cut out the doors. So first you'll need to measure the width and the height of the front of the workbench. You'll want to cut the width in half so that you can have 2 doors, and you'll also want to allow a 1/4 inch gap between the cabinet doors so that they don't rub against each other over time. After you find your measurements, you'll want to cut the wood using a table saw according to those measurements. For the doors, we are using 3/4 inch cabinet grade poplar plywood. Next, you'll need to attach cabinet hinges to the door frame according to the manufacturer's directions. Make sure that the hinges are perfectly aligned and level. After you attach the hinges, you'll want to attach the cabinet doors to the hinges according to the directions. Make sure that the doors are perfectly aligned and level before you attach them. This next step is totally optional, but if you want your workbench to look a little nicer and more decorative, you can add some shaker trim to the cabinet doors. To do this, we are using a 1/4 inch by 2 inch poplar trim. You'll need to find the measurements for the top, bottom, and sides of the doors, and then you'll want to set your miter saw at a 45-degree angle and cut one end 45 degrees to the right and one end 45 degrees to the left for each piece. After you have cut out your trim pieces, you'll want to apply wood glue to the pieces and use clamps to hold them to the doors until the glue dries. In order to make your workbench look nicer, you can sand it down and apply paint, and then once the paint dries, it's time to attach door handles. To do this, you'll want to position the handle on the face of the door and mark screw holes, and then after that you can pre-drill the holes for screws, and then attach the door handles by drilling in the screws from the back of the door. The last step is to attach the countertop. To do that, you'll need to measure the length of the workbench and add 4 inches for overhang on the right and left sides. For this workbench, we used a kitchen countertop, so it was already 25 inches wide. If you are not using a pre-cut countertop, measure the width you need and cut the countertop accordingly. 24 to 26 inches is usually the width of a standard workbench, but it can be adjusted based on preference. We are using a handheld saw to cut the countertop. Be sure to use all your safety gear and safety standards because cutting a countertop can be tricky and dangerous. In order to attach the countertop, you'll first need to attach 2-inch angle brackets to the sides of the bench using 1-inch screws. After that, you can line up the countertop evenly with the workbench and then secure it into place through the angle brackets, again using 1-inch screws. The next step is to cover the raw edges of the countertop with matching adhesive trim. To do this, you'll want to measure the sides of the raw edges and cut the countertop edging, adding 1 inch to that measurement. Then attach the edging according to the manufacturer's directions. You'll want to trim off any excess with a box cutter, and if you have any rough edges you need to sand down, make sure you file in one direction, otherwise you could detach the edging. The very last step is to mount the miter saw to the workbench. Since the miter saw is heavy and dangerous, it's best practice to secure the miter saw to the workbench. Position the miter saw where you want it, taking into consideration the length between you and the saw blade. Make sure the position is comfortable for your reach and not too close to the blade. Then with a pencil, make a mark where the holes are on the miter saw. Usually there are 4 holes to secure the miter saw with screws. Then pre-drill the holes through the countertop to the underneath side. You'll go all the way through the countertop. And then you can place the miter saw on the workbench and insert the 3-inch screws through the miter saw and workbench. From the underneath side, attach the washers and bolts and then tighten to firmly secure the miter saw to the workbench. And after that, your miter saw workbench is finished. And the last thing left to do is just add some supplies underneath. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy making your own bench.